Okay, so I'm going to be talking about an article which was written by Hilary Putnam, who is um, basically a renowned writer and thinker in the analytic tradition of philosophy, along with Quine and a lot of people like that. Putnam has written a lot in metaphysics, epistemology, and the philosophy of language. This article is called Meaning and Reference, and it does have to do with the philosophy of language, as you might expect. I've done some videos on a few articles, including Russell and a few others in recent times. So in this article, he's kind of course, philosophy of language, it has to do with meaning, it has to do with what meaning is and what it is for a word to mean something, and how it gets that way and why. And Putnam talks about meaning having to do with intention and extension, and what are extension and intention. That's the same dichotomy as connotation and denotation, as well as sense and reference. Extension is basically the same as reference. Extension, if something extensionally predicates, it points out something, it picks something out indefinitely. So if we say that the morning star refers to Venus, the extension of the morning star is Venus. And intention is more like sense, where we have that Frege's puzzle, the morning star and evening star, how both are the same planet, Venus, but they don't have the same meaning. Morning star and evening star have the same extension, the same reference, but not the same intention, not the same sense. And Putnam is sort of hinting at the ambiguity of meaning, and as to what it is for a concept to mean something, or what it is for a word to mean something. And he states that many of the term is a concept. Talks about what concepts are, as Frege did, and he has this question of what meaning is. Is it a psychological mental thing? As we know, Frege spoke out against psychologism about meaning, and about number too. But Frege was totally against psychologism. And psychologism is basically the philosophy which kind of uses the mind to explain things. A psychologistic philosophy uses the mind to explain things like number, or meaning, or the world. And there are theories like Frege, who states that meaning is a objective, realistic thing, where it is independent of our minds. And Putnam is talking about of meaning as possibly mental entities. And he kind of uses the creature with the kidney, creature with the heart example that Quine did. They are differing in extension, but they're differing in intention, but they have the same extension. I am a creature with a kidney, I am a creature with a heart. However, creature with a kidney and creature with a heart have different intention, and the two terms can't differ in extension and have the same intention. It just doesn't really work. And he talks about the verifiability theory of meaning, and the verifiability theory of meaning is the idea of meaning and the idea of knowledge, which came from the logical positivists like Carnap. And basically what verifiability is verifying knowledge or verifying beliefs or verifying anything um, um, as to observational data, and how something can be indefinitely confirmed based upon um, observational data. And the verifiability theory of meaning kind of points at the correspondence of meaning. And correspondence is that, and we have like the big correspondence theory of truth and meaning, where for a word to a word corresponds directly to what gives it meaning. Theory of meaning rests on two unchallenged assumptions. One is knowing the meaning of a term is a matter of being in a certain psychological state, memory, or belief. And he's kind of not on board with that. Secondly, the meaning of a term determines its extension. Putnam argues each are not satisfied by any notion. Both of these things are not something that is satisfied. They haven't been challenged, and yet they haven't been grounded on really anything either. They have no warrant. And Putnam says that the traditional concept of meaning is one resting on false theory. And he kind of brings the twin Earth versus the XYZ example, where we have the regular Earth, and we have XYZ. Thinking about XYZ as a planet which is just like Earth, except for one thing: water. On this Earth, we have H2O, which is water, and on XYZ, we have something which is like water, but it's not chemically the same as water. Basically, the whole thing is that what do we mean when we say water? I'm trying to get my head around this, try to explain it right. The example is that on XYZ, the thing that is not chemically the same as water, but it's in lakes and rivers and oceans, it's referred to as water. And so basically, water does water mean the same thing on each planet? The extension of water is not a function of the psychological state. And he's basically kind of trying to point out, for one thing among a few things, that the meaning of water on Earth and the meaning of water on XYZ, or twin Earth, excuse me. XYZ is the substance, excuse me. I can't even read my own freaking handwriting. The substance which is like water, which is on the twin Earth, is called XYZ. We have Earth and we have the twin Earth. And we have a certain two people, each on, one is on Earth, one is on twin Earth. They're both thinking about water. Where on the regular Earth, water is actual H2O water, while on twin Earth, he's referring to XYZ as water, but they don't have the same extension. So they both understand water differently, and the extension of water is not a function of a psychological state. So he's one thing among many is he's trying to state that meaning is not a mental psychological thing, and whether and basically if as to whether one thing is similar to another, or as to if water and if H2O and XYZ have the same extension or intention or whatever, mostly having to do with extension. That's it's a issue of scientific investigation, and there's basically to understand that, to figure out what its extension is, that's a matter of scientific investigation, and thus that's investigation of the world, and that is not a independent thing. Thus, he's kind of trying to. Sorry, I'm having a brain fart right now. So I'm sorry about that. I'll get there. And he has even a better example with aluminum and molybdenum, and where on twin Earth, basically they have pans that are made of molybdenum, where here we have aluminum pans. However, on both planets, they're both thought of as aluminum pans. And he's basically saying that the psychological state of the speaker doesn't determine the extension of anything, and that there is a division of linguistic labor. There's the scientists, first off, which can discern between water and XYZ, aluminum, molybdenum, and anything else. The linguistic community slash the collective body can basically identify water as water and identify XYZ as XYZ. So there's scientific investigation and scientific work that has to be done to basically determine extension of aluminum or molybdenum, and there's also verification with the linguistic body. So there's a division of linguistic labor, and there's the scientists versus the linguistic community. And the division of linguistic labor, and there's a division of non-linguistic labor. Thus, chair doesn't need a division of linguistic labor. And we have the idea of an expert speaker. Expert speakers have a way of recognizing. Thus a chemist would have a way of recognizing what is molybdenum versus what is aluminum. And thus we have a collective linguistic body. And he talks about this hypothesis for the universality of the division of linguistic labor, and where only the sociolinguistic state of the collective linguistic body to which a speaker belongs fixes a term's extension. So he's arguing as to how a term's extension is fixed, and that's through scientists and the linguistic collective body. And here we have again another example, the example of the hammer versus the screwdriver, and on the steamship. And he gives a lot of examples here. To have H2O in one container, XYZ in another, when previously they were both thought of as water, both water, scientific investigation, and corroborating hypotheses and that kind of thing, plus testing that with a linguistic body can fix a term extension and exclude the substance XYZ from the extension of the term water. And we have this is a concept from Kripke, Saul Kripke, the idea of rigidity, where a designator is rigid if it refers to the same individual in every possible world. So being rigid about something means, almost in a way, being thorough, where a designator is rigid if that designator refers to the same individual in every possible world. And where we have the term water, it is a rigid term. Where water can only refer to H2O and not XYZ, in that, if we'd had a twin Earth and a substance called XYZ, that would only be able to occur if scientists did that exploration, and we had that whole division of labor at work. And Kripke has a theory of meaning by use, or kind of like Austin's J.L. Austin, where we have the idea of a performative utterance, where with people like Frege and Putnam here, it's more like the world that Frege and Putnam both have like a realistic view of the world, where things are objectively, and meaning exists. We just have to sort of figure it out through scientific investigation. So it's basically out there. We just have to discern it. Where with Kripke and Austin, a performative utterance is that the way something is spoken can affect its meaning. The certain context is put in, and all that. And we have from Kripke the idea of a cross-world relations, where the two-term relation R of EF, whose extension set isn't all in the same possible world, where that's kind of where we can find something that is not quite as rigid. Thus, a certain thing is water if and only if it is the same as water in the actual world. If the operational difference, water and XYZ, can be mistaken for water, and if we know the structure of water, no possible world exists where water isn't H2O. So, and then he kind of talks about the idea of indexicals, and how we can kind of go beyond the idea of a indexical of now, here, or this, and how we can be more rigid than using stuff like that. Okay. Words like water have indexical components, where water is stuff that bears no certain similarity to water around here. Water, another time, another place, another possible world, has to bear the relation same for our water to be water. Thus, intentions and our intentions concepts, where we have the used by speakers, and are and do intentions determine extensions. No, so intentions don't determine concepts, nor do intentions determine extensions. And it is a extension. Once we have extension, that is what can bear some sort of intention. And Kripke says that natural kind words are rigid, and extension is determined socially and indexically. Where we have, with socially, we have the division of linguistic labor, and indexically, where we have where it depends on actual nature of particular things. And where, indexically, where we're talking about, we're having an actual realism here. We're trying to point out we're getting meaning from the actual world, though. That's what makes this kind of pretty cool, I think. I'm sorry I'm not very good at explaining this, because I think I'm kind of failing at that. So I apologize. Society can contribute to the real world and to semantics, and a better scientific theory can help all. A better semantic theory must encompass society and the real world. So, among all of my horrible explanations, what's going on here is, first, he's denying that meaning is a psychologistic thing. Secondly, he's arguing that meaning first is extension, then extension. Intention doesn't really do any work. Extension, once we have it, determines extension, and thus determines the concept. And thirdly, extension of a certain term is gained by two things: the division of linguistic labor and indexicals, or indexicality. Thus, we have the idea of scientific investigation, thus, discerning between water and XYZ, and we have the linguistic collective body, where we can have expert speakers and people like that to corroborate certain things. So it's almost like what's going on here, I think, is almost like a linguistics having to do with science, and because this all pertains to the real world and how we can talk about it. So again, I'm sorry about my horrible explanation of this. I think I lost track among my horrible handwriting here too. So again, I apologize. I'm sorry. And if you think I left something out or did something wrong here, I would gladly love to hear it. Please come